Hey everybody, welcome back to the SOLIDWORKS Electrical Implementation video series. Up to this point, we've covered a lot of the basics about the libraries, some of the configurations, and I've only just began to scratch the surface, especially when it comes to all the different configurations. But again, this is just to help you get started and have a better understanding of certain things that you might want to think about setting up beforehand. So as we can see here on the screen, we have our projects manager. So once we have all of our configurations done, we're probably just about ready to start working on our first project. And when I have a project open, you can see that it comes up in blue, letting me know that I have that project open. If somebody else on my team, if I've gone ahead and set up my system as a network installation with multiple users, and somebody else has another project open, it will appear in red. So I just wanted to bring that up, show that real quick. But as you can see, because I had that project open, we have the document tree on the left-hand side. We also have the component tree and all the components, which this project doesn't have any components yet. But for this particular template, we have 4 locations. Now, there's a few things about your projects that I'd like to cover real quick. And again, I mentioned this in a previous video, but each project can be unique. It doesn't necessarily always have to have the exact same setup. It does need to have the overall top level project title and at least one book. And then under that book, you can have whatever you want in any fashion as far as folders and subfolders. You can have additional books within the project. So I can go ahead and add a new book. And then inside that book, I can add new folders, as we see here. So again, however you want to organize this, it's very easy to do. It's a basic file structure, but it's important to know how to organize those and move those around. If I wanted to, I can always go ahead and drag these in as well, move those folders throughout the project. Besides the books and the folders, as we saw under the Components tab a second ago, we also have locations. Now, for locations, something to think about when you first start a new project is how many locations am I going to need for this project? I may only need one location, but if I am going to try to connect to the 3D side of everything, I may have multiple locations, or in this case, I have 2 top level locations, and then I have 2 sub locations, one for each location. And it's not the easiest to see in this view, but there is a location tab, a location icon under the project tab, and we can see the same information here. We can, of course, go in and edit the properties of each one of these as needed. But why did I bring up the fact that there, in this case here, I have 4 different locations, and working with the 3D side, why is this important to set up now? Well, one, setting it up now will allow you, when you go to essentially associate a 3D assembly or create a brand new 3D assembly, it's taking into account your locations. So hopefully it makes sense. So what I can do is maybe I only want to have one assembly for everything. But if my assembly is really big on the 3D side, I probably want to set these locations up so that way I can have multiple mechanical engineers working on the project at the same time. Because if I go ahead and open up location 1, I'm going to lock out location, sublocation 1, sublocation 2, sublocation 3 under that top one. So by setting this up ahead of time, it gives me a little bit more variety and a little bit more leeway when it comes time to actually working in the 3D space and maybe doing our wire routes and stuff like that. So it's just something to think about ahead of time before you dive into your projects. You can always go in and add locations after the fact, but you have to remember that even though you add the locations, now you have to go in and assign those parts, those components, to those specific locations. The other nice thing about your locations is that I can potentially change the location for just that sheet. So in the case of this schematic power sheet, I changed it to just location 1, and so everything that falls on that sheet will automatically be changed to location 1. In addition to that, I do have the ability to assign location areas. So even though this sheet is all location 1, I can potentially say, all right, everything in here is going to be location 2. Everything else that falls outside of this box is location 1. Everything that falls inside this box, as I add those parts, will be automatically take on location 2. The same applies to functions, which is another way to organize your information. You can set up your reports to as we saw in the report configuration video, I can set up and filter or organize my reports based off of location. Well, I can do the same thing with function. So maybe inside of location 2 here, I have these components are going to be part of the primary function, and then whatever falls in this window is going to be the secondary function. So you can really start to fine tune your parts, and depending on how many parts you have in your project, this can be very beneficial for, again, organizing those reports going forward. And again, as in order to set up functions, you would simply come into your functions manager and you can build these in as necessary. Now, these locations and your functions are part of this particular project. So if you start a new project, you'd have to go in and set those locations. However, if you build this first project out and you have functions that you use in a lot of your projects and locations that you use in a lot of your projects, well, guess what? Once you save that as a template, all of those locations and functions and all those configurations we changed in the previous videos are all going to be a part of that template. And I'm going to reiterate that fact throughout this video series, because templates are your friend in this case. So additionally, in addition to the locations and the functions, and we've been working on just this one schematic here, the same type of information can also apply to what we call a line diagram. If you notice on the left-hand side, again, under the schematics folder, I have 3 different types of sheets. I have the 03 line diagram. You can see the little the little icon for it. It's a line diagram. Sheets 4 and 5 are both schematics. And mixed schematic is 06 mixed schematic is called a mixed scheme or mixed schematic. And what that does, it allows you to combine certain functions from both schematic and line diagram. What I mean by that is if we open up our line diagram, and we notice here at the very top of the screen, we have the line diagram tab. And as soon as I switch over to the schematic, the line diagram tab disappears, and now we have the schematic tab. With a mixed scheme, which comes in as an orange tab, we notice that we now have both schematic functionalities and line diagram functionality. So personally, when I'm building out my schematics now, I tend to stick to just mixed scheme, because that way I have all of the functionality that I want. I just have to remember what tab to go to. But some people don't necessarily need to use schematics. They're just doing block diagrams or line diagrams. So they're just going to insert a symbol and draw a cable to it and call it good. Whereas other people's don't do line diagrams and they only do schematics. So using the schematic or the scheme type of sheet, it works for them. But I find a lot more people are starting to embrace the use of a mixed scheme, because again, it provides the use of both of these different tabs. In addition to the line diagram, your schematic, and your mixed scheme, you also have a cabinet layout drawing. And a cabinet layout drawing provides a different tab and different functionality. And if you remember from our library, we have a 2D footprints manager. So it's going to allow you to insert different types of symbols. And this is where you can come in and define a cabinet and add rails and add your panduit. You can scale it down, essentially make a front view of your cabinet or chassis, whatever it is that you're working on, or top view of your chassis. You have the ability to add dimensions and so on with this. It utilizes the parts you have, and you notice here with the cabinet layout, it's going to, it almost looks like your cabinet layout, right? But it's going to allow you to simply insert the symbol based off of the components you already have, which is also, again, tied to your manufacturer parts. So garbage in, garbage out. The more information that you put into those manufacturer parts, including a link to a 2D footprint, will just make it that much easier when you get to the point of creating this cabinet layout view. So just to recap on the different types of sheets and the different information we just covered, obviously within the project, if it's blue, that means you have it open. If it's red, that means somebody else has it open. And if it is red, doesn't mean you can't open it. The only time you won't be able to open up in the document tree here, if it's red, I can't open that because somebody else has that specific sheet open. So that's the one time you'll notice that you won't be able to open. You'll get a warning and it'll say that you can't open that particular sheet. Additionally, you also have your locations and your functions that we have here. And again, remember to try to remember to add those locations ahead of time. It'll just make your life easier as you move through your projects. And then all the different types of sheets, from our basic schematic sheet, our basic line diagram, the mix scheme that combines the two types of functionality for both these, as well as our 2D footprint drawing. So again, I hope this helps just give you a general idea of the basics of a project. We're going to dive deeper into a few of these items next. So thanks for watching and see you next time.